Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, An Elder's Perspective by Elder Florence Paynter. My name is Jessica Knapp, and I am the Online Engagement Coordinator for Canada's History Society. The Treaties and Treaty Relationship webinar series is a collaboration between Canada's History Society and the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba. Joining me as co-host for today's webinar on behalf of the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba is Cynthia Bird. As many of you will recall, Cynthia discussed in a previous webinar the history of treaty making and the significance of the Royal Proclamation in 1763. For those of you who do not know, Cynthia is a Cree educator from the Peguis First Nation in Manitoba in Treaty 1 territory. She has 34 years of work experience in community education, research involving urban Aboriginal homelessness, Indigenous curriculum development, and group facilitation processes. Currently, she is advisor to the Treaty Education Initiative and lives in Treaty 7 territory in Calgary. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Jessica. Welcome all. Tansi, bonjour, okay. The Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba is a neutral body created through a partnership between the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and the Government of Canada with a mandate to strengthen, rebuild, and enhance the treaty relationship and mutual respect between First Nations and Manitobans as envisioned by the original treaty parties. For more information on the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba, please visit our website at www.trcm.ca.
Thank you, Cynthia. Canada's History Society is dedicated to promoting greater popular interest in Canadian history, principally through our publishing, education, and recognition programs. To learn more about Canada's History Society, please go to www.canadashistory.ca. Both Canada's History Society and the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba are on social media. If you are interested in extending today's conversation on Facebook or Twitter, feel free to mention us or use the hashtag #TreatyHistory. For the best possible experience, I encourage you to close down any unnecessary programs your computer may be running, like Photoshop or Spotify. I would also like to remind viewers that if you need to increase the volume of the presentation, please use the computer volume controls in addition to the Adobe Connect's volume controls. Using both of those will assist in having the best audio possible. However, if you do come across any technical issues, a recording of today's webinar will be available in the next few days. If you have questions during the webinar, you are welcome to ask them using the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. However, questions will be held until after the presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Elder Florence Paynter, whom I've known for many years. Elder Paynter is from the Sandy Bay First Nation in Manitoba and is a member of the Norway House Cree Nation in Manitoba as well. She's a third-degree Mide Anishinabekwe and holds a master's degree in education from the University of Manitoba. Elder Paynter speaks Anishinabe fluently and has been involved in many language and cultural initiatives and ceremonies. She helps teach the cultural and spiritual knowledge and traditions of the Anishinaabe people. Florence attended residential school and works hard to teach about the history of our people and the legacy of Indian residential schools and its impact on us as a people. She believes that we can be proud of who we are by learning about our own families, our own histories, and our own languages. Elder Paynter will provide an elder's perspective on treaty making and the importance of teaching treaties in the classroom. First Nations history includes the importance of First Nations languages as a critical part to understanding First Nations history and identity. Elder Paynter will briefly summarize the webinar series and how it can be used by teachers and the general public who are interested in learning more about treaties and the treaty relationship. We are very pleased to have Elder Paynter join us today. Please join me in welcoming her.
Bonjour, Kinagidininem, Miwach, Kabi, Andoptamek, no. Kagwen sit taming hagotoy niya gagi ne nakuniga open kenzi banik Gagi nigan shkamuat, inian miunako no moat, unoin onako niganon ka mi doing yave gate vitamin yave. Ujo ka kinagi den linim, Joshka vinashikwe, disnikas mako, denamagan, and singi mang, ibin the kadajimide art Anishinabek. Niwas getting in him, kakina, kavi andot tomeke, hami wet. I'm gagagan, nigan shkamuat, bojuk, kina getting in him. I send greetings to all and each and every one of you. My name is, English name is Florence Paynter, and I'm from Anishinabe First Nation, but married into a Norway House band, and that's Treaty 1 and Treaty 5 respectively. I speak Ojibwe, and I also wanted to acknowledge my spirit name, which is Blue Thunderbird Woman, and also the clan that I belong to, and also have gone to look for my ancestral knowledge that was left on the side for me for when I was ready to come searching for it, and I've been on that journey and heading towards my fourth this spring. I wanted to begin, in the treaty making process, we all understand that the treaties were made with us as Anishinaabe, and however else you want to call yourself, maybe in your own respective way of how you know your people to be called. We went into the treaty making process because we had land, we had a way of doing things, we had our own beliefs, and we had a land base that includes all of Canada, and we were in a position to be able to help people with the land, and also with the settling things that needed to be settled as they were approaching our lands. And I know that we do have a history, and the very reason why I choose to begin by introducing by my spirit name is to show the fact that we are sovereign, and that we still speak in our languages despite all the things that were put there as an obstacle for us to lose some parts of the things that make us a people. In particular, I speak about the land and how reserves were created for us to live in, and how it became pretty restrictive for our people to go all over the place, and it's all interconnected. It's all interrelated, but I think it's really important for us to kind of remember that and keep that in mind, because as we look at the history of the treaties itself, we've gone through quite a journey, to be where we are, and our people tell us, the ancestral leadership that went into the treaty making process. They did the treaty making with real good intentions, and that's why I think it's important that we also acknowledge the tobacco that that was used in the pipes, and we still use our tobacco in our pipes when we're talking to one another. And in my hand I have the tobacco that I placed there, so it will help me remember what it is that I need to say from my perspective. And in particular, I guess from a woman's perspective, it's important to begin to look that in the ways that we governed ourselves and in the structures of how we governed ourselves and still govern ourselves, is that a woman's voice is still very important, and a woman's um, direction is still listened to. Sure, we may have our men that will speak on our behalf, and we still have our men that do that for us. And if they should not represent us in the way that we meant them to represent us, and then we have the right as Anishinabekwe to be able to take that authority to speak on our behalf away from them. So, we still remember that. In fact, if we look at our governing structures, it tells us all of how we have governed ourselves. So the only thing that may be really risky is the land base, is the land stuff. We do have our history, we have our culture, our ways of doing things, our land, even though that's where we have been moved to reserve and very restrictive movement to a certain time. And our languages, some of us still speak it very fluently, while some of the other people that may not know how to speak their language through no fault of their own, but because it's what makes us strong, and that's what people or the government of the day was trying to minimize the use of our language by punishing us when we spoke in our languages, and by not allowing us to practice our ceremonies and things that make us a people. Those are the things that were very basis of the laws and regulations, policies, undermining us and not allowing us to be strong in our who we are as a people. To make a treaty, it is important that you have two willing partners. And I know that there were people from the clergy and people that maybe were able to speak the English language and were still maintaining their languages that may have been the translators. But even in the pictures that you see in the treaty charts and papers, you'll see that our people signed the treaties with their totems or their clans, so that again, pushes that fact that we were very strong people, and we knew, and our elders knew what they were getting into. They tell us too that ceremonies were done to make sure it was the right decision that our people were making. And I think today we can look at some of the promises that have been broken and some of the engagements not honored. Nothing wrong with what we have done as a people, but sometimes the other party may not honor what was in the treaty making process. And I know that many of our people speak about the time, when lodges would go up to get that direction. And we do go to our lodges still into 2017 to get that direction, to get direction in our life, so I hold that to be true. It's important that that the treaties are taught in the classroom. And I know that it's important because I think we have to have the full story. We can't have a one-sided information about the treaties. We need the full information. And as I remember, when I was going to school, I never learned anything about the treaties. I didn't even know there were numbered treaties. It's only after going to university and paying particular attention to what was being taught to me. And I took a very keen interest in finding out who I am as a First Nations person, as an Anishinaabe woman, and find out what my role and responsibility is, to passing on that knowledge. And yes, I have made a lifetime commitment of teaching people and trying to change the mindset of people. And as recent as this morning, I was in a classroom, and some of the questions that are being asked, from the youth, I find always very intriguing because they talk about how come the treaties still exist. That in itself is a full loaded question and a good opportunity to begin to talk about the treaties and about what the treaties were and what they meant to our people. And when we look at the signs, the symbols that we see that the treaty commissions are promoting all across, is that the pipe and also the medals that our people went into the treaties with, or resulted in them being presented with the buttons. And you see two figures, shaking hands. And when you see the pipe also presented there, it's like a sacred covenant, and you can't break a covenant. It's very easy for me to understand and for our people to understand. When you have the pipe and you have the all those things that were promised to them, that's part of the treaty, and that's part of what we want to get people to understand, because sometimes you feel that treaty education is only for the treaty people. Why would it only be for treaty people? That's our understanding of the treaty that we are trying to get across into the classroom, and that to see every person that has come to this country has come with that knowledge, or at least you'll hope that's the knowledge they come into the country with, that they have a treaty with the first people of this land, and there's promises that have been made, and there's promises that have been kept and some promises that haven't been realized yet. And I tend to believe that in time, as our people get more educated and more, and people learning more about the treaties and the significance of it, we begin to understand one another and why people will continue to stand up for what they believe is true, what they believe is their truth, and they'll stick to that, because of the fact that it was like a covenant. It was a covenant made with one another. When the treaties are being taught in the classroom, I know that the Treaty Commission has done an excellent job in bringing people together to put some curriculum together that can be taught right from the kindergarten level right up to grade 12. And I remember my little great-grandson was talking to his mom, and they kind of made a promise together, and they shook on that promise. And to me, I thought, oh, what a treaty making process in action, from a mom to a child. We read about books that make promises, and promises are meant to be kept, true to the word. So for me, yes, it is important for it to be taught in a classroom at all grade levels, and for those that have participated in the classroom presentations, I really admire your commitment, and I'm sure that you have been able to look from a different perspective how you might approach a subject area. And I think that's the beauty of having the curriculum that was formulated by classroom teachers, represented both by non-native people and native people. That's an excellent start for teaching it in the classroom, but not only teaching it, but making it more acceptable and adding on and enhancing the knowledge of the young people, because later on in life, and I told this to the group this morning, it's important that you learn that, because you're going to be in a position of authority that are going to be sitting at negotiation tables. We've had lots of opportunities to begin to dialogue about the fishing treaty, water rights and all that, all those things that are really important to us as a people, and it's really critical that people begin to understand, what is this all about, It's all there. All you need to have is an open mind, a desire to learn, and be able to pass on that information to your classroom, to your partners, to whomever you can. It's not a bad idea. I think I need to find out more about this, and that's a lifelong learner that will do that, learn as much as they can to help enhance their understanding, because it's important. It's really important to us as we get older, and we see and look at some of the trials and tribulations that we still face, trying to get some settlements done with the treaties. So I think it is, very critical. Also, it forms our history. We have a history, a pretty interesting history, on how we've gone from being the people that we were, free to be, free to go hunt, trap, and fish wherever we wanted to, and it's not long ago, that our people were totally independent, and as regulations and policies came in to undermine our freedom, there were restrictions being made to how much people can take from the land, and how much food. And I don't know a person from my two groups, Treaty 1 and Treaty 5, that hunt for a sport. I don't know anybody. They do it for sustaining themselves and their families. So it's important to keep those things in mind. I mentioned the importance the language must have played in the treaty making process, because many of our people didn't speak the language, didn't speak English, in which the foundation of how the treaties were negotiated was the use of the language, and again, I had mentioned that the dodems or the clans were used to sign the treaties. So I know that in places they had people that used an X. So you have to be critical in your own thinking, in order to understand what was being said, what was being promised, and then to be able to use your dodem as your signature. That's pretty binding. As far as that goes, that's pretty binding to me. And I'm sure it is to a lot of people. All of this plays into our identity. We're proud people, and we will stand to get what it is that were promised in the treaties. And there's so many more things that kind of cross over, but I'm trying to stay focused into the teaching of the treaties into the classrooms. The way that I've seen people, use it is for public education. I've seen and participated in the blanket exercise, which I thought was really powerful tool to be able to get to the visual concept of how the pieces of land that were taken as people were coming in, and as I sat and was invited to sit as an elder in case emotion come to the top, because it certainly can come to the top, a feeling of resentment, a feeling of helplessness. And I remember one time that I attended, and everybody knows the rules of the game, played by the rules of the game, and there was only one individual, one educator I saw that resisted. Only one out of about 60 people, So again, when I talk about being able to transfer that feeling of empathy to other people, that was one example I saw coming from a teacher's perspective, and I didn't know how I felt, but I felt bad for the young man that resisted and wanted to keep his piece of blanket intact, although it was only a little piece by then. So we do public education, and I think that by talking about our experiences in residential school, because I think that was part of the plan in terms of the making of the treaties, and and having those that slips that allowed our people to go from place to place. Those existed, probably till about 1950, I'd say. I'm not too sure on the exact date that those were stopped. But if I were living in Norway House and I wanted to go visit my family in Sandy Bay, where I was born and raised, and then I would have had to apply for this permission slip to leave Norway House to go and visit my family. Even that in itself shows the unfairness and also the inequity, because once I got married, then I was totally off the ban list of Sandy Bay. I'm on the Norway House ban list. Ja, Okay, so in the last little while, I think I have tried to provide you my perspective into the treaty making process, but I also really wanted to conclude by saying that we are in the right direction to begin to fulfill the promises that were made, and we're on the trail to teaching and learning about the treaties in the classroom, so the young people that could be the politicians, the decision makers of the future, would be going to these tables, negotiation tables, with a deeper in-depth knowledge about the treaties and what they mean to us, and what it is that we need to do as a people, continue to learn from one another. Because as I learn more, I share more of what I learned from my elders as well, Excuse me. We're into our end of the presentation, and I would like to say thank you to all of you for providing me the opportunity to give my perspective into the treaties and the treaty relationship. Kinanakominim, gitanamikonim, egosani, migrach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a click.
Elder Paynter, thank you so much for your presentation. Now we'd like to invite participants to ask some questions if you would like. So please use your chat to type in some questions that we can pass on to Elder Paynter. One of the questions we have is there any information on which provinces are teaching about treaties in the classroom?
The answer to your question is that there are 3 provinces that are currently teaching the curriculum, and that's Saskatchewan, and there's Manitoba, and there's another one, but I don't see it in my little notes here. Help. And Ontario, I think. What I would like to add to that is that most of the provincial schools have gone through the seminars and have gone through the teaching of the curriculum in the classroom. Unfortunately, in Manitoba itself, because of the, there's the provincial system and there's also the federal system. And as you know, the federal monies are not readily available, so we tend to have a low attendance from the First Nations. But the ones that do go to school into the provincial system are really lucky to hear the treaty making process and learning things about the treaty itself.
Thank you, Elder Paynter.
I hope that answers your question.
We have another question. When you visit classrooms, what are the most common questions you receive from students?
Most of the things that I've been designated to speak on are the residential school experiences from a survivor. And I am a survivor. So, first-hand experience seems to be a thing that the students will want to learn about, and they have really interesting questions, that they want to talk to me about. And also, of course, we do the treaty, doing parts of the treaty curriculum to their classrooms. And some of their questions are not really fully aware of the role the government had in all this, and it's like no one taught any of the history of the treaties in the classroom, or they didn't learn about the treaties themselves. They didn't know anything about the treaty relationships whatsoever. So it's just like a brand new area.
Thank you, Elder Paynter. We have another question too from Vivian. With the new Indigenous division created in Manitoba, and I think she's referring to the First Nation, Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center's announcement about the 10 or 11 First Nations that are coming together to form their own, it's like a school division in Manitoba. She's asking, do you think that treaties will be taught more now?
I sure would hope so. But that's also difficult for me to answer simply because right now, the way that the federal government works, and it's only topping up the dollars that the bands were getting right up to then, right? So what they do with the extra dollars, I sure would hope would include the teaching of the treaties into the classroom. And again, it's not going to reach everybody because it's only 12 schools that will be engaged in that school division.
There's another question on the Truth and Reconciliation, the 94 calls to action. How does that fit into a treaty education in the classroom?
Oh, it certainly fits because, it's reconciling and it's reconciliation. And for me, reconciliation means all the things that we weren't taught in our own education. We weren't taught anything about our own history. And I can go back to our own history, our own culture, our own languages. Those were not taught. So, to reconcile would be putting those things back in place and definitely teaching from those bases.
Thank you, Elder Paynter. We have another question now. If classroom teachers wanted to engage elders and invite them to the classroom to come and talk about treaties, how would they go about connecting with elders? Do you have any advice for them on how they might be able to do that?
There's many there's many people that live in the communities. I would suggest probably going to the band office. They usually have elder councils. They have elders that work with the education system and begin there, you know. And also the Treaty Commission itself would make some recommendations for people that may come forward and be willing to share their story.
Thank you, Elder Painter. I don't see any other questions. At this point, I think we've answered all the questions. So I will hand it over to Jessica. Thank you so much, Elder Painter, for taking those questions this afternoon and extending your presentation.
So thank you, Elder Painter and Amanda, for your work today, and Elder Painter for your presentation. Thank you, Cynthia, for joining me as co-host today. And thank you to everyone who viewed and participated today's webinar from the Treaties and Treaty Relationship webinar series. Your participation means a lot, not just to both Canada's History Society and the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba, but to the whole concept of bringing treaties into the classroom, bringing treaties into the home, and making treaty knowledge and the history of treaties in Canada part of our understanding of Canadian history. That is incredibly important, and we have to keep on working towards that. Everybody should be able to have a conversation, an intelligent conversation about treaties in Canada. Today's presentation does mark the 6th and final webinar in this series, but it does not mean this is our last conversation about treaties. Not even close. Please use this series in your classrooms and your workplaces. Share it with your friends and family members. We are always accessible if you have questions. If there's a particular presenter you want to reach out to, please, I welcome you to send me an email at any time. If you have registered for the webinar series, you have received emails from me in the past, and I welcome you to use those to reach out to me in the future. I will share with you now a link for a feedback survey. Please take a few minutes to complete this feedback survey and to let us know about your viewing experiences today. The link is there. When you click on it, it will take you to the page, and you scroll down a bit on the page, and it should be there for you. And with that, I would like to thank everybody one last time. Thank you for coming out and spending an afternoon with us. I hope to have good conversations with you in the future. And with that, I'd like to say, have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Miigwech.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you all to the viewers that participated and took some time to sit with us and to listen to Elder Painter. We appreciated the time that she took to be with us too. We invite you again to visit the Manitoba Treaty Relations Commission website at www.trcm.ca. To get more information on the Treaty Education Initiative, but also to check out the resources that are there that includes videos as well as print and map materials and online links for classroom teachers. So with that, we thank you so much for your interest in treaties, and we look forward to you continuing that journey